So it's the beginning of the year. We're all setting up like a potential TBR or TBR if you want to, of like what do I actually want to read, and so am I. I would like to give a little bit of clarity to my brain. Like, what are you reading? What are you not reading? What do you find important? What don't you find important? I tried this last year, and I would mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake. So I feel like I'm more qualified now to like maybe help you out. I've learned from my mistakes. So I'm a little bit more confident that I can do it this year a little bit better. So yeah, we're gonna look a little bit at my TBR, my plans for the year, and through it I'm gonna give you some tips. The first thing that you need to know about me for this year is that I've put up a book buying ban. One, because I was like, look, outside of one, which I've already pre-ordered, which is Hellbent by Lee Bardugo, that comes out in January, I don't have specific books that I really want to read as soon as they come out. And you have so many books laying around that I own that I haven't read yet. And I was like, look, you don't need to buy that many books. Just read what you have, because I do have actually really very much books that I love reading, that I'm very much looking forward to, but then I get like distracted by the new shiny things. There are definitely books on that shelf that have been there for 2-3 years that I'm still excited to read. I just don't do it. Literally like, here, have my money. I want to read it. And then I didn't. What type of reader are you? For example, I've learned this past year that I am an insane mood reader. Like, I have to feel like I want to read that book, or specifically more like a genre. And also like I learned that I like to switch it up, like since I like very more heavier works, like very heavy literature or whatever, but after that I need a romance novel. I can't do two after each other. I will stop reading. There are also people who say like, I read only specific genres that I really like. Maybe you're a vacation reader. Like, you primarily read when you have time off or when there's vacation. Like, realize that like by figuring out your TBR, specifically when it comes to numbers, because people like put up how many books they want to read, but recognizing when in the year you have time is very important. We'll get to it later. But also for maybe you're just like specific genres, or you someone who like you're a junk reader, as in like you need to read one series in one go and then you don't read for a while anymore. It's like, hey, I want to read this series and I'm gonna read all 5 or 6 books as quickly as I can, because that happens every time, and then I don't read for a few more weeks. I think by figuring out what type of reader you are will help you set up your TBR a little bit better, or like when you want to read what. That brings us on to tip number 3. Maybe you have the question. It was like, I maybe want to expand into the genres that I'm reading, or I don't really know what type of genres I like or don't like, and I don't know where to start, which is honestly a fair question. What I've realized, what I've asked about with my friends as well, is like, what type of TV shows or movies you enjoy watching is generally also the type of genres in books that you like. So figure out, like, look at what you enjoy watching and then find books that are in that same genre of TV show, movies. Which is like just a small tip. I think if you, for example, maybe watch movies or genres more in one specific time of the year. Like, I like darker movies, more psychological movies when the days are becoming shorter. So I tend to like also read around that time as more. Like I said, mood reader, which very much works for me. I think by figuring out like what you put up on Netflix, what you put up on Disney, whatever streaming service you have or don't have, understand like what you do. And specifically if you go to the movies or you have to pay for a movie TV show, what are you willing to put up? Like, what are you willing to pay for? Because those are the types of genres and books that are guaranteed to help you out in setting up your TBR and reading in next year. The next tip, which I've mentioned slightly before, is figuring out when you're reading in a year or how much time you have. For For example, with my job, with everyone who has a job or school, which like around your exams or around like really times of the year where you have a lot of deadlines, you probably don't have that much time to read. So figuring out when those peak moments are for when you work, school, whatever, family, life, figure out when those peaks are and understand that like your reading time will probably go down. Or maybe you say like, I have a very stressful time in this moment in the year, always. It helps for me to read XYZ type of books. So like kind of look at your yearly calendar and figure out when you would probably be more prone to read what. So you can like look at your TBR, set your TBR types of books you want to read, and then calculate that in. And also like if you're, for example, I always leave space open for new releases or books that I've come across on social media or from other booktubers, bookstagrammers, whatever, book talkers like that I mentioned like, okay, that looks very interesting and right up my alley. I want to read it as soon as possible. I always kind of leave space open for that. So that's also like figure out like how you read. If you say like, hey, I want to read one book a month or one book or 6 books a year, totally okay. Just figure out like what works for you in your calendar, in your time and space, and set space aside and time aside if that's what you need. Because I sometimes have very busy times and I literally block in my agenda half an hour. You're gonna read right now. Like you need to wind down after a long day, or I know that this is really busy. Instead of going on social media, I block in time in my agenda to read. So these are kind of my main tips, I think. So basically, forget the numbers, just read what works for you. Figure out what genres you like. For me, variety is the spice of life. Don't be afraid to DNF books. Don't be afraid to change your TBR if that comes up. Block time if you want to. Understand like why you're reading as well, like if it's purely for leisure time or if you want to learn something, maybe in specific subjects. My TBR this month will probably be romance, literary. I have a non-fiction, Jeanette McCurdy's I'm Glad My Mom Died. Like I know I'm not a memoir fan, except if people love them, then I'll pick it up, otherwise no. This was kind of my tips and how I look at my TBR for the coming year. I know for the next 3 months after that, I will probably keep picking up my physical TBR and then reevaluate of what I want to read and what my TBR list looks like. If you have more questions on how to set up a TBR or want to know a little bit more of what I'm reading, you can subscribe to the channel or follow my Instagram, my bookstagram for this, where I also will kind of update you guys, which you can find in the description box down below. And then I see you guys again next time. Thank you so much for watching, and up until then, happy reading!